Back on Morning Line, thanks for joining us. It's our final segment this morning with Nick Haven and Arnold Hayes, both with Community Oversight Now. We're talking about the COB, the Community Oversight Board. 2 meetings in, we'll see how things go. They haven't really started taking action on much yet as they still try to get organized. They're busy, but not really yet looking at complaints and the like, but that's to come in the days and weeks. Just with regard to the Delkey and Hambrick case, that is really the one that's still on the forefront. Some would say they're watching out in terms of whether or not an officer is going to get away with something in a shooting that, based on the video, you have to say is questionable and will be looked at. That, well, you have your person holding the officers potentially accountable in District Attorney Glenn Funk, who has some people on one side saying it's great that he's pushing him forward and prosecuting, and others that are stunned that they've indicted and are going to try to bring him to trial. I mean, isn't that the way it's supposed to work if the DA thinks, and you have that in place? I'm just wondering, with Glenn Funk, somebody say, well, you have him doing this, why do we need a board?
I think it's just to provide an additional independent party to continue looking at it, because the DA routinely works with officers. It's obviously a part of their, a big part of their job. So I think it's important to have an independent group that doesn't necessarily have those ties and relationships to be an objective third party and to just look at these things and say, I know perhaps you have a relationship with this officer or this officer, his superior or something, but it's important to have an outside group say, regardless of that, we think this officer did wrong.
And we have had individuals that have taken that route. There have been a number of cases where Metro has settled, because someone actually filed a lawsuit, but this is actually going to save Metro some money because people will have a place where sometimes people just want to be heard. And I think a lot of times we think it's just in cases of deadly force, but it could be something as simple as an officer stops you and they use profane language with you, they're being disrespectful, and a person decides to file a complaint. So that's what I'm saying. So those would probably be the vast majority, or profiling, those would be the vast majority of the complaints that that the board will probably receive, and there will probably be very few like the Hambrick or the Clemens case.
Hopefully we don't have a lot of cases like that. All right, let's go to Mike. Mike, good morning. Hi, Mike. Good morning. What's on your mind?
I'd like to make a statement regarding this oversight board. Obviously, the legislature feels like the legally authorized supervisory personnel that administer and control the police department are being undercut by a board that has subpoena power. Obviously, that is the philosophy on Capitol Hill, and they're about to vote that restriction out of this ordinance. The point I'm trying to make is everybody's mad nowadays. Everybody's mad at somebody or something. And all you have to do if you're mad is to get up and start hollering and screaming, and there are going to be a few people out there that are going to back you no matter what you're mad about. That does not give credence to the argument that the law enforcement community, God save us if we didn't have them, that does not give credence to the fact that the law enforcement community of Nashville, Tennessee cannot be trusted. That does not give credence to the fact that the presumptive guilt is always on the police force, whose noble cause is to defend this city. We are 150 officers short right now, and that number grows daily because officers are leaving Nashville because of this loudmouth group that wants to interject themselves between the administration of the police department and the police officers. Please remember, we live in a democracy that's represented by elected officials, and this business, just because you're mad, don't mean that we should disassemble due process for the police department and these precious people that are trying to defend us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your call. Yeah, I mean, and he's voicing some of what you heard from the FOP when the COB was on the ballot, is that, look, we already have the apparatus in place to hold these officers accountable, and we don't need this extra layer. It's taking away some of that power. What do you respond to that?
When people go through the process and the goalpost keeps getting moved, it's very discouraging. We decided that this was something that Nashville needed, so we went before council. We submitted legislation. The legislation was turned down. We decided to go to referendum. It passed overwhelmingly. Now the board's in place. This is what the Nashville citizens decided to do.
I'll say this, I think, and he didn't say as much, but I think maybe what Mike and others may worry about is that this board is one, because Mike sounds like a very strong supporter, as we all are, of professional law enforcement officers, that this board is out to get cops. Right. And I think it's going to be very, very important that, and I know you can't schedule this, but that this board, as it looks at these complaints, come back with some opinions that are diverse, and that there is some show of support in cases where all law enforcement officers are. Now you're saying they're going to call it as they see it, but if they come out with a string of investigations that nail police officers, if that's the way it falls, well, so be it. But that's not going to be good for people trusting the board. They're going to want to see something they think is fair.
I think our makeup of the board shows that they will be an objective.
That's going to be very important.
Because we have 3 former officers, 1 former police chief, all former officers in Nashville on that board.
Right, Emmett Turner.
So,
right?
Yeah, Emmett Turner. So I think that this board is anti-police. You have former police officers serving on that board. I think it will be an objective group, but that doesn't mean they're anti-police. Yeah.
But what happened to government being able to actually you know, have legislation and pass legislation and get that done? I mean, how would the state of Tennessee like the federal government coming in and telling Tennessee? If the federal government would have told Tennessee what to do, we would have had Medicaid expansion passed. But Tennessee opted out of it, and they had that right to do that. But they're saying Davidson County doesn't have that right. We actually overwhelmingly voted for something, and now we don't have that right to do that.
Do we mean with what the state lawmakers are doing?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. And I also wanted to comment, he mentioned that we have a big job we have a lot of jobs that we need to fill in the police department, and that this is only hurting that. And I would argue that this has been a problem for a long time, this morale problem, and again, push people to look at that FOP survey. Only 4, on a scale of 1 to 10, the average was a 4 out of 10 rating Chief Anderson on his leadership skills. I think that we have a problem in the police department, but it's not the COB. It's the leadership in the police department, and that's what we need to look to first before we just blame the COB for all of the
Well, I'm blaming the COB at this point when they haven't had a chance to do anything.
And if I could,
it was something the voters chose.
If I could say one more thing too, is just be sensitive that if this is something that is not a problem for you, just think it may be a problem for someone. Again, and I use the example with the Me Too movement, for me to say that women are not being harassed and that's not happening. But just consider that there may be some people out there that it is happening to, but you just need to have a little bit of empathy for your brother and your sister. That's all I would ask.
All right, let's go to Drew real quick. Drew, are you there? Hi, Drew.
Hey, how you doing?
Go ahead, sir.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. What's your comment?
Yes, we definitely need an oversight board. If for instance, that thing that happened to Daniel Hammer wasn't nothing but a public lynching. We got to have somebody to speak up for the average man around here, because if they don't, we just gonna get killed in record numbers daily. I mean, you shoot a man in the back and he's running away and he has no gun on you, but you shoot him in the back. What's the difference in hanging him in a tree?
Well, listen, I hear you, but the thing about that is, you know, well before the COB was even, you know, created, I mean, the Hambrick case was not one that was just being glossed over. We have a district attorney that has indicted the officer involved on that case for murder. So I don't know that that's a good example. Now, if nothing had been done and nothing was even looked at, then I know what he's referring to. There are other cases. I understand that, Drew. The Hambrick case is going to go to trial, and Delkey could be convicted and be sent to prison for the rest of his life. So there is some accountability happening in the Delkey-Hambrick case as we stand. Now, I don't know what the verdict's going to be, but it's there. That's not a good example to say why I think the COB is needed, because it's being dealt with.
Right, but I would argue that it was largely a reason. The reason that happened was because of this campaign. This campaign highlighted an issue with our police department and accountability, which then led to public pressure on DA Funk, and then which then led him to file that charge. I think you can't separate that from this campaign. I think they're inextricably linked.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, you know, you never know. The pressure, would Funk have not done this? I don't know. I mean, that's a huge step. I like to think he's doing what he feels is right regardless, but I think that's one of the reasons the Oversight Board doesn't always see that happening. So you guys optimistic about how things are going to go?
I am. I'm really proud of the board that we have in place, and I really wish them well, that they do a great job. I do believe this is something that's going to be good for Nashville and for Tennessee and the nation. This is a model for the nation.
We will see how it works out.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you as well. We will talk again.
All right.
We'll be certainly following how this plays out.
Okay.
Thank you both for coming on and taking the calls. We'll take a break. I'll be back with a programming note about tomorrow right after this.